Porkins Palestinian Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find the show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And if you want to help support AFR, if you want to help support all of the work that I do and many other people do, including, of course, Danny Romero, the man behind the scenes who runs everything for us at AFR, then please do consider becoming a donator. You can become a recurring subscriber to AFR. You can find all of that if you go to AmericanFreedomRadio.com and you click on the donate button. Lots of different ways to support AFR, and of course we are in need of some support. So if you can, please go ahead and do that. Well, we've got a very exciting show for you today. And before we get into it, I just have a few quick little announcements. One, I wanted to thank Floyd for becoming a recent subscriber of mine on Patreon. And if you want to support me on Patreon, you can always do that at patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. And of course, American Freedom Radio has a Patreon as well, so definitely check that out. And also, I have actually did post the bonus podcast for PPR. I did, technically speaking, get it up in the month of July. I posted it yesterday on the 31st. And that's a really interesting episode. Some great stuff. I spoke with Matthew Russell Lee, of course, of Inner City Press, the UN journalist, and lots of stuff. We get into the Enlap Seng bribery trial. We talk about some corruption at the UN. So definitely go check that out or become a subscriber if you would like to listen to it. And of course, definitely also check out a recent interview I did with Robbie Martin over at Media Roots, speaking about Afghanistan and Eric Prince and a bunch of other stuff. But anyway, I can hear my guest rustling around in the background. And I am joined by a very, very good near and dear friend of mine, Lizzy, who we went to college together. Faithful listeners will know or will have at least heard of my trip to Israel, where I stayed with my good friend Lizzy. And Lizzy, you've just returned from Palestine. You were doing some work there. But before we get into that, how are you?
Kind of nervous.
Yeah, this is Lizzy's.
My hands are a little sweaty, but it's okay.
Oh, don't mine are. I'm drenched in sweat right now. I've got my window closed. In sweat. Yes, that is true. Thank you for revealing that to the listeners. But I do sweat a lot. And of course I've got my window closed so we can get the best audio quality. But
and
that
you
means
don't have AC, right?
No, no AC, just the fan, which isn't on. And I'm so. I think that they've heard me talking about how hot it gets, but it's like doing the show with like if you're an ant and there's a magnifying glass. That's what it's like in my room right now. But Lizzy, why don't you give us a little bit of background information? Who are you?
I am a 29-year-old hottie. I'm just kidding. I'm not hot. I'm a cellist. I'm doing some postmaster's work right now in North Carolina. I studied in Jerusalem. I studied classical cello in Jerusalem for 3 years. And then I went to the New School for 2 years. And yeah, that's basically what I do. I'm a cellist.
And if people are wondering, we're for some sort of personal and as well as security reasons, we're not going to be, giving out Lizzy's personal information, such as last names and things like that. And we're not going to be naming the program that you were working with in Palestine, again, because of some, just privacy security stuff, and we don't want to get anyone in trouble. But as I've been saying, you were, you lived in Jerusalem for many years. I visited you when you were studying cello there, and you do go back and forth to Israel. I know you've been back a few times since, and you were just recently in Bethlehem. You were in Beit Sahour, I believe is
Beit Sahour.
Yeah, which is south of Jerusalem in the West Bank. So, Lizzy, tell us a little bit about what you were doing over there. What were you involved with at the time?
I was volunteering for a music organization that basically gives free music lessons to poor. I don't know the good word for that, but disadvantaged Palestinian children. So basically it's like a social program that wants to improve these children's lives through music education. So I was teaching like private cello lessons there, and I also played an orchestra with them, and I was just kind of like an extra person to help in this organization.
Mm. And how long were you there for?
I was there for 5 weeks.
Okay. And this was the first time that you went to Palestine, in the whole time that you had been in the area, right?
Right. Kind of embarrassing.
Okay. No, that's fine. Well, I guess before we even get into the program itself and Beit Sahour and what's going on there, I'm just curious because, for instance, when I was visiting you, I went to Ramallah in the West Bank. And it's not that difficult necessarily getting into Ramallah, but it is a little difficult in terms of getting out. But, were there any sort of, in terms of travel and stuff like that, was it difficult to get there? Were there questions at the airport? Were there questions when you were leaving? Tell us a little bit about that at all.
Okay. Well, I didn't actually know that I would get in trouble if I told the people at the airport what I was doing. I just kind of instinctively lied at the airport because, like, I've been there a few times and they're assholes regardless of what you're doing and make you feel like you're doing something wrong. But, like, I didn't feel comfortable telling them what I was doing. And so I just told them I was there for, like, I was just a tourist, whatever. And then I spoke to my program manager because I was like going on the internet and like researching, like, do I actually need to have a visa to be here? Like, wait a minute, like, am I going to get in trouble for this? And I was on the U.S. Embassy website, and they're like, any U.S. citizens that are planning to do any sort of volunteer work in the West Bank have to get a visa. And I was like, shit, because I don't have a visa. Like, fuck. So I told that to my program manager, and she was like, don't sign up for any visa. It's bullshit. Like, if you even tell them what you're planning on doing, they're not going to let you do it. Like, you'll never be able to work with us if you sign up for this visa, you know? So she was like, kind of like, it's a trap. Don't do it. Like, you don't need any fucking visa. We'll just come. Just say you're like a tourist and you'll be fine. So that's what I did. And it was basically fine. But like, as far as getting into Bethlehem, I went with somebody who had a car, and it was super easy because they don't give a shit who goes into Palestine, right?
Right.
So they don't even check anything. You just drive straight through. The problem is getting back into Israel. But it wasn't really a problem for me because I have a U.S. passport, and so it was all good.
And were you able to just sort of drive back into, I assume, Jerusalem?
Yeah, I mean, I went with somebody who had a car, and she's a white lady, so they never stopped her because she looks like, she doesn't look threatening, I guess. And we also took like a different route, so there's a border wall, right, with checkpoints and all this shit that can be very difficult to get through. But then there's some other ways that you can get around where nobody checks you at all, and it's super easy to get in and out. So when I went those other ways, it was super easy, and yeah, I didn't have any problems. But when I went on the bus, they would go through the regular checkpoints, and then the soldiers would get on the bus and search everybody, and not search everybody, but ID everybody, and kind of intimidate them. There'd always be two soldiers, one checking and the other one with just a giant gun,
yeah, and I can attest
ready
to that
to raise
well.
hell.
No, yeah, I mean, I'll say, I'll just, to kind of back you up on that, I'll say when I went to Ramallah, it was really simple. And I went with, two friends of mine, who were also in the area at the time when I was visiting. And you just got on the bus and you just drove there. It took forever because you go through this really roundabout route and all these different checkpoints. And then you're in Ramallah and then it's fine. But then getting out, it is a little weird. And I was leaving super late. I don't think I got back to your apartment that night until midnight. And then of course I had to get to a plane. But that was a weird instance because you get into a cab in the center of Ramallah with Palestinian license plates, and then that drives you to this sort of scary side road near the checkpoints. And then you get out and you get into another cab with Israeli license plates, and that drives you through into Jerusalem. So it's a sort of a dicey moment for a second. And then of course in the airport, the second me and my friend Miles, who I was traveling with, we were instantly stopped. The moment. It's just a funny personal story. I had all of this stuff. I had a Palestinian flag. I had all these. God
damn it!
Palestinian CDs. I had prayer beads. I sort of went kind of, on a shopping spree when we were there. Because I don't, oh God, what's going to happen? And, you, Lizzy, you had given me a stuffed animal to give to your niece. And the security guy at the airport is like, did you accept any presents? And without thinking, I was like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I took this stuffed animal. And then suddenly they're taking us to a side area. There's, they've got all these, they had these little pads that they would rub on everything in our entire bag to see if there was a bomb or residue. And as they're ripping apart my bag, they're slowly getting closer and closer to this stash of all of my Palestinian stuff. And thank God they didn't get in for whatever reason. I guess they got bored, or they realized that me and my friend didn't really pose much of a threat to the airport security, but they let us go. But we're laughing about this now, but it is sort of a weird sort of scary reality. And I think, as we'll talk about a little bit later, that really does color the perceptions of Israelis and Palestinians and anyone that visits there. But let's talk a little bit about what was life like in Beit Sahour. Give us an idea of what the city is like and what it was, your sort of first impressions when you arrived there.
My first impressions when I arrived there were actually kind of ridiculous and don't really relate at all to what the city was actually really like. Basically just a normal little town, but because of everything that I'd heard about Palestinians and just listening to the news, watching the news and stuff and hearing about poor Muslim and all this stuff, I didn't realize that it had just gotten into my system so much that I was actually horrified when I first got there. when I went to my apartment, I was just like freaking out because I don't know. I just thought I was like surrounded by terrorists and all this shit. Like I couldn't sleep the first night because like every little sound I thought like someone was throwing a bomb. I mean, I'm paranoid anyways, but it was just, I don't know. I didn't think that that it would be like that. You know, I thought that I would just be able to cope and just adjust easily because I've traveled a lot in my life, and you know, I lived in Cambodia for a little while, but like I was just really afraid, and a lot of it is because of like the things that my Israeli friends had told me about, you know, Palestinians and stuff like that. So I was freaking out. I didn't leave the house at night for like a week because I was just afraid. But you know, once I started working and just like going to the grocery store, doing regular things, I just realized that it was totally just normal. Like it was just normal.
A town.
Yeah, with like people in it.
Well, and you know, it's interesting. You know, we were talking about this the other day on the phone, but the way that Islamophobia can affect you in a way where you wouldn't even or not that you wouldn't be aware of it per se, but you know, we're open-minded people. We don't harbor these sort of crazy thoughts. But as you said, you know, living in Israel for several years, interacting with, and I can attest to this too, when I was there, visiting you, you know, like, for instance, you know, we went to East Jerusalem, together, and it was like the nicest experience, you could have, you know, and you just walk there. It's not like it's this otherworldly place. You could just walk into, you know, it's like up a fairly large sort of hill, and then suddenly, you know, you're not in Israel anymore. You're really in like the Arab world, and everything is in Arabic, and you can hear the muazzin calling for the prayer. And we went there, and we went to a small cafe on top of like a deli essentially, and we had like tea there. And when we returned, it was like, oh my God, you went there? Like, you know, how you weren't kidnapped or something. And you can see how, you know, that can color your mind, you know, to a degree. So I don't know, Lizzy, I mean, just, talk a little bit about this sort of Islamophobia, how it can kind of like creep into your life, in a way that you wouldn't normally think. Cause it's not like you don't really harbor these ideas, but it does sort of color your mind. Talk about that.
I mean, I didn't realize that all the things that my friends were saying were just kind of making me think the same as them, you know, because they're my friends, and like I trust their judgment on things, and even though I know it's wrong to like be racist and whatever, but they would tell me about, you know, all the like why they're afraid, you know, and about all the things that have happened to them, and like it makes sense why they're afraid, but it's like why should you be afraid of every single person, like just because of something only a few have done, you know? And it's not like Israelis haven't done fucked up shit either, so like
no, of course. No, and again too, it's that when you're surrounded by people your own age, with the same interests as you, and you're having fun and you're just sort of hanging out, it is, also you don't want to like necessarily get into a fight every time you're hanging out with people, you know, over particular things. And, I think there's a time and a place for that. You know, like I know for me, I was essentially on vacation when I was there. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really, obviously I went to Ramallah and I wanted to see what was going on and stuff. But, you don't necessarily want to get into a big argument. And I think we'll get a little bit later, the sort of perspective of Israeli youth, because it's sort of fascinating and scary at the same time. But, Lizzy, when you were in, when you were in the West Bank, did you have a sense of the occupation? I mean, how did it feel? Was there anything that sort of jumped out to you that is different? Not even necessarily, about Israel, but just about traveling anywhere. I mean, did you have a sense of the occupation and the sort of daily struggle that people go through?
I mean, I mainly felt it through talking to people, because in basically every conversation, like when you first meet somebody, they kind of basically tell you their story and their thoughts about the occupation because it's who they are, And so I was talking about it with people there, like almost every time I went to a cafe or to like have an Arabic lesson or whatever, I would always be speaking with my teacher about like what happened there and all the, injustices. So basically that's where I mostly felt it. Also there would be like these weird, like, I didn't really know what they were, but like right outside of my window there would be these like political rallies after, let's say like a Palestinian got shot by a soldier or something. There would always be like a rally outside of my window until like 3 a.m. There's like tons of cars and like waving flags and all this stuff. I should have investigated more what those were, but I didn't.
Oh, but even that is different. Obviously, I mean, people get shot all the time, but I think right. You do say. I mean, I remember when I went to Ramallah, there was a kid that got shot by an Israeli soldier. I think right by a checkpoint, and it was kind of like scary, and you did feel it, suddenly when when I was getting to the bus, there were a lot more soldiers out everywhere. There were more, random searches and things like that. So you do kind of, you do feel it and stuff. And I think Beit Sahour is, I think, traditionally a fairly political city as well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to talk anything about that, I mean, did people seem, more politically savvy or more open to things like, talk about that at all?
I mean, I didn't really meet people that weren't from Beit Sahour, but the people that I did meet, like people from my work who are like basically like my age, like most of them had spent time in prison and stuff like that. And I do have a good friend who is part of this like political sort of group who has events and all this stuff, and they do a lot of community work, stuff like that. That's basically, I mean, I wish that I had the chance to talk to other people, but this is who I talk to.
Well, no, I know you had sent me some writing that you had done after you were there. And talk a little bit about this guy you worked with, Fadi, who was, I want to say he was about your age and had been arrested and jailed and interrogated, and some kind of crazy stuff happened to him. Talk a little bit about that. So that's basically who I was referencing, this person named Fadi. He was my sort of Arabic tutor. I was supposed to teach him English too, but we were both too lazy. We just basically smoked cigarettes and drank coffee. But yeah, he invited me and another volunteer worker over for, I guess they call it breaking fast. It was during Ramadan, so we ate this big meal with him and his mother, and he was telling me about his time that he spent in prison. It was really, really crazy to me. Just because he's, like I could relate to him so easily because he's my age. He's cool. Not that I think that I'm really cool, but he's really cool. So yeah, he was accused of being politically active, and interrogated for 20 days and then sent to prison. And he was telling me a lot of stories about when he was in prison. Like, he told me that they would hold them in these, like, sort of, he called them cages, but I think that was the wrong word. It might have been like camps, different camps, where they would just separate the prisoners
and he told me that he, like, would see one of his friends or something in another camp, and he would just, like, kind of beg the soldiers to let him be in the other camp, because he was, like, 18 or something. He, like, wanted to be with his friends, right? So he was kind of causing trouble because he kept wanting to change camps because he wanted to hang out with his friends. So they threw him in solitary confinement for that. And I remember asking him, like, oh, my God, that must have been so terrible. You were so young, like, blah, blah, blah. He was like, yeah, the worst part about it was that I couldn't smoke cigarettes. And I was like, oh.
Well, I guess
wow.
It's like the little things, too, you know?
Yeah, for sure. He also told me this funny story about how he would make his own wine in jail. He would, like, collect fruit that they would give him and somehow, like, found bottles. And he would, like, ferment his own wine and, like, drink with his friends in these cells.
Was that, were other people doing that? Do you know if that was, widespread or?
No, I think that was just something, he was just telling me about stuff that he did. And he said he did actually get caught for doing that. 'Cause, like, they were calling roll or something, and he dropped one of the bottles while he was drinking and got in big trouble. And he said, like, he was in a cell that was surrounded, that, like, on either side of the wall there was, like, Hamas prisoners, and on the other side of the wall was jihadi. And he said everyone in the prison could hear, like, the bottle drop and, like, crash everywhere. And he said, like, the next day when they were, like, having, I don't know what you call it, recess, outdoor time, like, everybody was outside, they were all, like, making fun of him, like, and, like, sharing, like, this funny experience, even though, like, you know, this person is Hamas, this person is not, and, you know, they typically wouldn't really get along, but that was funny. Anyways.
Fadi was essentially accused of being part of some left-wing sort of,
the Popular Front, yeah.
It was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Yes.
Okay. And, I mean, just to set the record straight, he's not, right? I mean, this is just a trumped-up charge, essentially?
I'm not really sure.
Oh, okay.
He might have been.
Now, and did he suffer any kind of physical abuse when he was there, or, you know, mainly just the sort of typical, you know, horrific prison? He
didn't tell me about any physical abuse, but, I mean, we weren't really talking about that. We were just, like, talking about funny shit that happened. But there was another coworker of mine who, he organized, like, a demonstration, like, sort of a march sort of thing on a Palm Sunday, where they, like, brought donkeys and, like, they all, like, sort of dressed as Jesus, sort of. It was, like, a peaceful protest, and they, like, carried palm leaves and stuff, and they walked from Bethlehem, the Nativity Church in Bethlehem, and they walked all the way, and they legally entered Jerusalem. And he got arrested for that, along with 3 donkeys. He told me that the soldiers actually arrested 3 fucking donkeys. And he told me that he was really badly beat up when he was arrested. And he said he was really thankful that he was in prison for, like, maybe just a few weeks, but he said he was grateful for those few weeks so he could recover physically from, you know, being beat up so badly, because they would beat you again when they would release you.
Really?
Yeah.
And what was your sense of how this affected them in terms of just, like, their lives as they exist right now? Did you get any sense of that?
Well, I think that it really depends from person to person. Like, for example, the person that I told you who did this donkey demonstration, he's, like, one of my bosses. He was one of my bosses at work. And I think because of those experiences, he's doing the work that he's doing today, you know, like trying to help these young Palestinian children to, like, grow up and, like, be strong and be good citizens, you know?
And now, Talking about the kids in particular, what were the kids like? Were they? Because I think there's also there can be this not desire necessarily, but the sort of like image in a lot of people's minds of, you know, like that if you're Palestinian, that means like automatically you have this sort of hard life and you know, you're screwed up and everyone is fighting, you know, the armed struggle and stuff like that. But you also, I'm assuming, met a lot of just normal little kids. What were the kids like?
I mean, it's kind of true, like this stereotype, because a lot of the kids that I was working with, most of them, they live in the refugee camps, you know, where life is really hard. You know, there's these almost nightly military raids where Israeli soldiers just come in and, you know, wake everybody up and arrest people, which, you know, makes it difficult to sleep at night. Also, Israel controls the water and electricity supply for these camps, so a lot of the times the water just gets like shut off for like weeks at a time without notice. So yeah, they live really difficult, like kind of fucked up lives, and so some of the kids are kind of rough, just because of where they come from, you know. But I mean, of course, there were other kids that were just kind of fine, but like, you know, for a lot of these kids, life is hard. So yeah, but
no,
they were like.
No, go ahead,
They were
Lizzy.
surprisingly, like, really, you know, they made a huge effort in whatever they did, like playing, you know, cello, like my cello students. They were super bright. I mean, not all of them, but, like, you know, it was surprising that they could, you know, pull it together enough to, like, try to play a scale on a cello. I don't know if I would be able to do that if I, you know, lived through what they did do.
And, I mean, you're talking about like, water scarcity and stuff. Did you have a sense of that at all? I mean, or is that really more, in terms of, being in say a refugee camp, or did you feel that in the city of Beit Sahour as well?
I think that's mainly in the refugee camps, but I know other people who were affected by it, but I wasn't personally.
No, I mean, crazy. And I mean, again, too, I mean, some of these little kids have essentially grown up in refugee camps. They don't really know much else,
Right.
other than, and some of these refugees, I mean, are refugees too in the sense that they're not even from that region, right? I mean, they were like, they were pushed out of other places and sort of resettled in Beit Sahour, right?
Right, yeah. That's why I was a little bit confused when I, you know, heard that I would be working with refugee kids, because I was like, how can they be refugees in their own, like, you know, where they're from, like they're Palestinians, they live in Palestine. But it was because, yeah, they were pushed out of their homes. Which were in Israel today, like modern day Israel.
And Lizzy, are there, I don't know if you'd know this off the top of your head, but are there like, settlers anywhere around there?
Actually,
is there anything like that?
I mean, you can see, like, on my walk to work every day, because, like, the area is very hilly, you can see, like, from one hill to the next really clearly, and, like, just the hill, like, right across from the hill that I was on, you could see the settlements. I think it's Gilo is what it's called. Yeah, you just see this huge hill covered by, you know, buildings that look totally different than the buildings that are in Palestine. So, and that's what the settlements are, yeah. So, and those, like, they continue to grow, like, every day, slowly, row by row, like, more and more buildings are added. It's crazy how close it is, you know. It's, like, right over there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but I didn't see any...
You didn't see any settlers
settlers
when you were there?
Hanging out around, no.
Okay. And any sense of, from some of the people that you met and spoke with, if they'd had any interaction with settlers or anything like that?
No, not really. Not the settlers themselves. Just like people, mention that they used to play on that hill that the settlement is on now, and they're like, I used to play over there when I was a kid, but now I'm not even allowed to go over there. It's somebody else's.
No, I mean, yeah, crazy. Well, yeah. let's kind of broaden this out a little bit too, and talk not just about specifically what you're doing there, but I mean, let's broaden this out in a couple of ways. For instance, you were asked to write about this, I believe both from the organization and also your college, and essentially what you wrote was deemed, quote, too political. Tell us about that, because this is a really sort of fascinating aspect of your trip, in that you're going there. It's obviously political. You're going into Palestine.
Right. I mean, and I feel like that's why, like, my college wanted me to write about my experience, because I was going to fucking Palestine, and it's a really fucked up place, and how do you expect me to go there and not, like, be affected by the it's not even the politics, it's just, like, life there. So I just said, like, what I saw, and I said how it made me feel, and they said that was political. Even though it's just, like, I don't even think that my opinions about what happened there, what's going on there, are political. I just think they're common sense. I don't know. Like,
no. I mean, I read
it's depressing, and of course, like, people are getting killed there, and people aren't, like, the people around the world aren't hearing about it. So yeah, I mean, it's just not political to me. It's just wrong.
No, I know. I mean, a lot of, I read through some of the stuff that you had written, and yeah, I mean, it's not, is it political? Not really. I mean, you're basically just describing the reality of what life is like there. Now, maybe they're perceiving that to be political, but I mean, a lot of what you talk about, is just sort of everyday things, I mean, how these kids are kind of struggling, raids by Israeli soldiers, just the reality of life that they're facing. And I mean, I'm curious too. I mean, because I would say, before this, you were not necessarily as overt, political, quote unquote.
No.
And, I mean, again, give us a sense too of, like, how this affected you, and again, this sort of pushback, that it's, we want you to go there, but I mean, what do they want you to write? Just sort of a glowing, it was wonderful.
Yeah,
I taught
like,
kids how to play cello.
If you just wanted to hear, they're like, we want you to focus on the, educational or musical side of your experience. Like, what it was like teaching music there. I was like, well, you could have asked anybody who was teaching music anywhere. Like, why would you ask me? Anyways, but how affected me? What was the question again?
No, I was just, I don't even remember now. No, I mean, just the idea of maybe not being political, and then sort of going there, and then, I guess it's sort of like, can you go to a place like Palestine and not come away with a political perspective being changed?
Right. I mean, I just felt like I was just so fucking unaware of all this stuff going on, like, children getting shot for throwing rocks. Like, and I know it's on the internet, and I know I could have just fucking Googled it, but it just never crossed my mind, even when I lived there, too, because people don't talk about it at all. And it's even, like, controversial to even, like, raise the question of, like, what's going on over there. Like, so I just never even thought to look it up. I never even knew there was, like, a wall, like, ridiculously ignorant stuff, but, like, it's,
No, and let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's a really interesting aspect of this. As you said too, it's all there. You can You can look it up on the internet. You can read newspapers. There's tons and tons of books about this. And you lived in Israel for 3 years and were fairly unaware of this. And, you know, I remember being there with you and getting into like arguments. Like you know, I'd bring something up about Gaza and the response would be that never happened. That's all a lie. And
it's like they don't want
they
you to talk
that.
about it. It's true.
No, talk about that for a minute, Lizzy. I mean, what was the sort of, you know, we were talking about this the other day, but I mean, some of the stuff that comes out of people we know, friends there, you know, if they were talking about Mexicans or black or anybody, you know, I mean, if they were in any other country, you would be shocked at how racist it is. Yet there, it's essentially just par for the course. I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, like, for example, I have a really good friend that I've known for a few years who's Israeli. And I was, like, at a bar or something, and I was kind of afraid about telling him what I was doing during the summer, about going to Palestine, because I know that he's very, I don't know how to say it, anti-Palestinian.
Yeah.
Is he I don't know if he's a Zionist, something like this. But, yeah, so when I sort of told him what I was doing, he was like, that's funny that you say that you're doing that because, like, Palestine doesn't exist. And I was like, well, it's funny because I'm going there and all this stuff, but it was just, I don't know. And he's not like a stupid guy or a stupid, ignorant guy. He's, like, pretty smart and, like, I like him. He's a good guy, I think, but it's just weird to hear that sort of thing come out of his mouth.
Sure,
but it's okay because they're just Palestinian, you know, like.
Right.
You're allowed to.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you know what was one thing that I noticed quite a bit, especially more so when you're in Jerusalem, is, I mean, they don't even use the term Palestinian. They just say Arab. You know, like, now if they're talking about an Egyptian or Jordanian, they might say, you know, Jordanian or something. But Palestinians, they're just Arabs. They don't. So again, it's that they don't really exist. They're not real. They're not even, you know, they're just a nameless, faceless mass of people. And, you know, I mean, again, too, it's shocking. I think for a lot of people, this will be like, oh, this is so obvious, you know, duh, of course. But I don't know. I think people would really be surprised too, especially the level of, you know, these are not necessarily like, you know, neo-Nazi groups here that preach a lot of the same sort of rhetoric about other minorities. You know, these are like regular people. I mean, these are people that, you know, you and I are friends with. People that, you know, are just sort of typical, you know, people in their, you know, late 20s, early 30s. You wouldn't bat an eye at them. Yet they, I mean, espouse wild shit. I mean, you know what shocked me was just like the amount of like racist jokes that were just sort of like thrown around. You know, especially about, the sort of like nomadic Palestinian, groups that are around there. I forget, there was like a word for, what Israelis would call them. But they're essentially, you know, like sort of just dying out, but these like nomadic tribes or families. And I mean, it was like they were like the butt of every joke. And I mean, again, just give us a sense too of just like how detached people are, especially in what's really crazy. I can see it in Tel Aviv, you know, like when we were in Tel Aviv, it's like Miami. And it does feel far away, but in Jerusalem, it's right there. And, you know, talk about the idea that it just sort of doesn't exist to them.
Well, I mean, I was first of all, like, really shocked about, like my boyfriend is Israeli, you know, and when I went to Palestine, all this stuff, when I was there, I was, like, telling him about all this stuff, and, like, and he grew up in Israel, you know. And I was saying, you know, how fucked up the situation was, talking about, you know, how these people were pushed out of their homes and like murdered and all this shit. And he was like, "What are you talking? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about." And he's not, you know, he's not a racist. He doesn't hate Palestinians. He's just like a regular, open-minded person. But he never ever learned about what actually happened in school, you know. So yeah, he was just like, "Yeah, tell me everything. Tell me what it's like over there because I have no idea. Tell me what you learned because I have no idea."
No concept.
Because also they don't. What?
No, go ahead, Lizzy.
And also, like, you know, they don't think to look at other sources of media. Like, they look at their news and they're like, "This is what happened in the world today." But I feel like a lot of their news leaves a lot of things out, you know? So it kind of, like, just sort of keeps people in the dark, even if they are, like, good people who are interested in what's going on. Like, they just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, because, again, too, I think there's this, I don't know, knee-jerk reaction to, like, be like, "Oh, all Israelis are evil, and, you know, heartless," and that's really not true. You know, like, I met lots of Israelis that I still consider friends, and, you know, I would be heartbroken if something were to happen to them. And I, you know, and you do see that they are capable of all sorts of, you know, I mean, that's the thing that's so kind of creepy and disturbing, is the way that you can take these people who are good. They're caring, loving people that do care about the plight of humanity and things like that. Yet you can isolate them to such a degree that people that are literally on a hill, you know, near them don't exist. And that's like the true sort of power of the Israeli government.
I remember I was at a friend's house when I was living in Israel. I was at a friend's house. She lived in Gilo on that fucking hill right across from where I was staying this summer. And we were outside or something. We could hear the prayers coming from the mosques in Bethlehem. And she was like, "I wish they would just shut up with that stupid singing." And I was like, "Ha, that's funny." Because I was just, I don't know, she was making a joke, and I didn't have a clue, like, what was across the hill. I had no idea. I was just like, "That's weird." But yeah, and she's not a bad person. I think she's a bad person now, but yeah.
No, like, no, I totally. I think that's what I found shocking when I was there, was the fact that you could have people in such close vicinity, just either think that they're all bloodthirsty, that everything they say is a lie, or that they're just this nuisance, you know, that needs to be taken care of.
And like, their life is pretty fucking good. I mean, not to say that like they all have wonderful lives, but like, things are much better over there than they are in Palestine. So like, why would they be the ones to make a change? Why would they like, you know, the same reason why a lot of Americans don't care about shit, because basically we live in a pretty peaceful country and we have a lot of rights that other people don't. So why would people care, you know?
Lizzy, we're coming up towards the break, but I also wanted to get your take on one more thing, and that is the sort of we talked about this the other day on the phone, but this sort of like lack of involvement by people, even, you know, in our age group, and, you know, the people that have traditionally been more socially aware of things like the plight of the Palestinians don't really seem to care right now. And just sort of curious as to your take on that, or anything you might, you know, you want to say to people out there.
I'm still kind of just like shocked, because I didn't realize that people didn't really know where I was going. Like, they didn't know. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do this volunteer work in Palestine. There, people are like, wow, it's amazing. Like, even my family, like, yeah, great. And like, right before I went, I remember I was talking to my brother-in-law, who's a really smart guy. He's awesome, right? And he was like, so what are you doing in Syria? And I was like, I'm not going to Syria, dude. Like, I'm going to Palestine. He was like, well, it's the same thing, right? I'm like, well, well, no, it's not.
Yeah,
Then
right.
I just recently found out my mom was telling this Pakistani doctor that she works with that I was in Pakistan. And I'm like, I wasn't in Mom, like, and she, you know, it's not even like a big deal for them. Like, once they even do find out where I was or where I was going, like, it's not like they would look up, you know, Palestine,
Right,
what's
exactly.
going on over there. Like, they were just like, oh, cool, whatever. And that's it. And I actually haven't really talked to anybody in my family about it either, about this, because, like, I just feel like they don't care.
No, I agree completely, and I think it's. I guess what gets me though is just the. I wonder if it's almost like sort of like fatigue of it. You know, it's like it's been so horrible since 48 that, you know, it's just like, oh, we know, you know, like I'm over it. But you know, there are things. You know, I sent you an article earlier today, but I mean, settlers storming into Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. I mean, the ongoing tension, the sort of like rampant right-wing extremism all over Israel, and a lot of, you know, I mean, young people, you know, people our own age, people that are politically active, don't seem at all involved. Do you have any kind of take on that, Lizzy? Is that just like because people are too concerned with like Instagram?
Well, probably, yeah. But I mean, I feel like people would just also get overwhelmed at the number of horrible things that are happening in the world, and also are kind of freaking out about what's going on in our country right now. So they feel like my friends and some of my family, they get overwhelmed by all this stuff. So they're just like, fuck it, you know? And that's it. And then they just concentrate on their own lives. But I mean, when I was over there in Palestine, I was like, feeling like I wanted to say so many things to like my friends and family and like really spread the word and tell people about what I learned about. But now that I'm here, I just feel like nobody wants to hear it. And then I was asking myself, like, why am I talking about it? Like, what good is that going to do?
No, I mean, it feels like an intractable sort of a situation and something to deal with. I mean, I think that is in part why people don't talk about it too, is that it's sort of, what do you do? You know?
Right.
And it seems more and more like, it's so, unless you were to, have Israel and Palestine form into some sort of South Africa, I don't know how you can really solve the problem. You know, I mean, the settlers are not going to leave. And, you know, what do you do about Gaza? So, and it is kind of depressing. Is there any kind of positive spin you want to leave the listeners with? Cause it can be so negative.
Yeah. God. I mean, I think I was telling my dad this or something. I was like, yeah, I'm learning about all this stuff and I feel horrible. I feel so horrible and useless and blah, blah, blah. But like, I would so much rather feel this way and be aware of shit that's going on in the world than not know anything and be really happy.
No, I think that's actually, that's some sound advice too. You know, and I, you know, I guess you don't have to be so consumed with it that like, you know, life sucks for you, but, definitely, I think the awareness is something that more people should strive for. But I think we're coming up, on the break right now. Lizzy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure.
And next time you travel somewhere crazy, let us know and we'll get you back on the show.
Cool.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio. You're an American institution. American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And when we're not invading some sovereign nation or setting it on fire from the air, which is more fun for our Nintendo pilots, then we're usually declaring war on something here at home. Did you ever notice that about us? We love to declare war on things here in America. Anything we don't like about ourselves, we declare war on it. We don't do anything about it. We just declare war on it. It's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving problems, declaring war. We have to declare war on everything. We have a war on crime, the war on poverty, the war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice we got no war on homelessness? Huh? No war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. No money to be made off of the homeless. If you could find a solution to homelessness where the corporate swine and the politicians could steal $2 million each, you see the streets of America begin to clear up pretty quick. I'll guarantee you that. I will guarantee you that.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio. Porkins Palestinian Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are joining me right now in the second hour, in the first hour, I was joined by a very good friend of mine, someone I've known since college, my friend Lizzy, who was just telling us about her recent trip to Palestine, where she was teaching music to basically refugees in Beit Sahour. But Lizzy had to go, so it'll just be me in the second hour. And I've got a couple of things. I had like a sort of a full show, more or less, that I've been working on the coup in Turkey, and maybe I'll get to that a little bit. But I did. There were some other things I was sort of interested to kind of get into. I might save this Turkey coup anniversary for a later show, because there's been some just sort of bizarre little things I just kind of wanted to address that I've seen popping up the past couple of days and sort of quietly over a few weeks. But and that is with this some new quote unquote revelations that some people on Twitter have been talking about in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and some new clues into the case and things like that. And it sort of is I think is a great a way of just talking about the way that particular case has unfolded in the media. But it's also an interesting look into the conspiracy culture, into the way that we have all of these sort of like celebrity journalists on Twitter and armchair investigators on Reddit and other places. And, I know a good friend of the show, Ed Opperman, talks about this all the time. I think he was just talking about it like a week or so ago. But, there's been, I've gotten a few people, tweeting me and sending me some articles and things like that, talking about, these new revelations or these new rumors that, there are some, one of the, I guess now I think would probably be a young woman in question who was supposedly, sexually assaulted, raped by Donald Trump and Epstein, is alive and well. This is Maria is her the pseudonym that she's been given, and that she's alive and well. That she is connected to to Katie Johnson, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's interesting, they don't use her name, but they refer to this Jane Doe who originally sued Donald Trump during the campaign, and then of course dropped the lawsuit. And they say that there was another person that was a witness to some of these sexual crimes, and that she was a 12-year-old girl named Maria, at least in the lawsuit, or something to that effect, and that she's alive and well, that she is is recorded some an interview with an undisclosed news outlet, but it's a major news outlet, and this news outlet is sort of sitting on this interview that she's done, which corroborates what was said in the Jane Doe lawsuit, because of legal concerns or something like that. And a lot of this seems to be coming from some guy called Claude Taylor, who is is one of these sort of Twitter investigators. He appears to be a real person. You can look him up. It's at True Facts Stated. Claude Taylor is his name. He describes himself on Twitter as a veteran of 3 presidential campaigns, served on White House staff, Clinton, country over party, Never Putin's Bitch, I'm Shaggy Chaos Agent, undisclosed location near DC, and then for his website it lists this website travelphotography.net, which sorry, but you just heard some music pop up there. It's from Claude Taylor's photography website. I don't know if you heard that, but it's a real photography website or whatever. I checked out a few of the different posts. He's got some places, like New York and all sorts of photography, some places I've been to, obviously some places that everyone has been to, Statue of Liberty. It sort of like typical, reminds me a lot. I mean, he sells these pictures, these photographs, and it's very much, like the kind of, art that you'd have like in an office building or something, like a nondescript, office, or maybe, a doctor's office or something like that. I mean, it's nothing, too exciting. It's not, it's travel photography and mainly of like, landmarks and things like that. Not entirely, there's some other things, but, a lot of the sort of landmark stuff. So if you, if you go to the New York, thing, it's, the Brooklyn Bridge and, I don't know, what else? There's some, stupid, or I'm looking at DC, White House, Lincoln Memorial, things like that. Anyway, this guy, Claude Taylor, I was linked to some stuff by him, and there's another person as well who's also, been talking about, Epstein. And as I said, I mean, there's been some articles, I forget what the name of I'll try and pull it up right now, but, what was it? Investigativereporter.net, I believe is independentreporter.net is the, name of the website that is, been also sort of, publishing stories about this 12-year-old Trump rape victim called Maria. And this is all based on this guy, Claude Taylor, this person on Twitter who, among other things, claims to have, worked, for as a veteran of 3 presidential campaigns and served on the White House staff. Now, a couple things on this. One, this guy has said some things that have been, I believe, have been confirmed, somewhat. And he seems to have some sort of, he talks about his sources, and this is something that I find really interesting. Everybody right now has got sources. Everyone has got secret sources, and whether you're Mike Cernovich or George Webb or Claude Taylor or some dipshit on the internet, that, uses a pseudonym and doesn't have a picture of himself. Everyone's got sources these days, and I find that really sort of fascinating. Now, maybe that is a result of the democratization, of media and stuff with the internet, and there's a lot more sources, but I find it a little odd, that everyone's got these amazing sources, high level, that seem to, be, feeding them all sorts of great information. Now, quickly, before I kind of, get back into this guy, Claude Taylor, and what I find wrong with him. Sometimes I think they are real. Cernovich does appear to have some sort of source. I do think it's real. It's probably some flunky in the White House. It might be one of the, idiot Trump son or something like that. He does appear to have somebody that does sort of feed him information. But a lot of what they're feeding him is just press release stuff. It's stuff that they want to be put out there. It's not really like, he's working hard, uncovering stuff. It's someone is calling him and telling him, put this on Twitter. This is what we want. But anyway, so we get this guy, Claude Taylor, who's been tweeting, about all sorts of things. And it has been picked up, in some semi-reputable, real, websites. There's an article, I think, on Daily Cost talking about this guy as a sort of a joke. So, I'll link to that if people want to check that out. And some of the stuff, as I said, some of the stuff that this guy Claude Taylor has said seems to be bogus. Some of it does appear to have some validity, and some of the things he said have sort of come to pass. But I find a few things sort of iffy with this guy and iffy with the story and the way that it sort of popped up again. Now, a few things with this. Claude Taylor and this other person, Venture Capital, or Kelly2277 on Twitter, who just, I don't know who this person is or what their deal is, but they've been also talking quite a bit about this, Trump rape and Jeffrey Epstein and stuff. First off, these people, especially Claude Taylor, style themselves as having some sort of insider information that only they're privy to. This is not entirely true, especially when it comes to this Jeffrey Epstein stuff. There are other people. I have heard rumors about things. I know Ed Opperman has heard things. Lots of people in the research community that have been following this have heard things, whether they be from sources, anonymous sources, or just simply that, there are people on the internet talking about stuff. So these sort of like rumors and things do exist. I have heard lots of other people, on the internet and elsewhere talking that there is something going on with Epstein behind the scenes. There's some sort of, lawsuits and things. But this shouldn't really come as much as a surprise to us because there's so many ongoing lawsuits with this guy. Okay, there's just a lawsuit, another one that I believe is the Brad Edwards suit against Epstein that's ongoing right now down in Palm Beach. So, again, lawyers talk, law clerks talk, bailiffs talk, journalists, this sort of information about these things, it trickles on out, okay? It's not, it shouldn't come as a surprise that there are rumors circulating on the internet and on, websites and among, internet independent journalists talking about this stuff. This is all kind of like real. Now, with this Claude Taylor guy in particular, I find a couple things interesting. And also with this other person that I keep seeing popping up, Kelly, they make it seem like they're the only ones that have been piecing this together and cluing in on these things. And I see this a lot with the Jeffrey Epstein thing in particular, and maybe that's because I focus on it so much, but in the alternative media in general, and that's the constant recycling of stuff. Okay? So they'll find a page from a longer, let's say, criminal complaint involving Epstein. Okay? They'll find some page in it. Now, they won't link to the original document like I do, but they'll just they'll put up a screenshot of the page, maybe with a highlighted text, or they'll put it in like paint or something and circle a particular section from, let's say, a criminal complaint. Okay? And they'll make it sound as if they're the first people to ever find this thing. And suddenly, oh my God, we've just the Jeffrey Epstein case wide open. And I saw that particularly with this woman, Kelly, who makes these sort of blanket statements about things like, oh my God, Epstein was involved in a pyramid scheme where other girls were being paid money to recruit other girls. No shit. Okay, this was always going on. This was, obvious to anybody that looked at this case from the very beginning that this was going on, okay? And this is obvious to anyone out there that has, watched Law and Order or something. Yes, of course, there's pyramid, I don't know why she said pyramid scheme, but yes, of course, he's delegating work out. He's using other young girls to coerce, girls. And again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or make myself big up myself with any of this, but, I did a whole, I believe it was 2 hours, okay, talking all about Jane Doe 43, another ongoing case against Jeffrey Epstein here in New York, where I detailed all of this, where I broke it down. I talked about all of, Natalia Malyashev, Leslie Groff, Sarah Kensington, all of these people, okay, that were, again, recruiting other people. I talked about the concept of, that within this hierarchy, a victim of Epstein's could graduate to become a procurer of other young girls in exchange for money. I mean, this is all there, okay? But they kind of paint up these facts, and suddenly I get inundated by all sorts of people sending me emails and tweets and things. And I'm not saying like don't do that. It's fine to do that, but again, portraying these things as if it's brand new information that they've just discovered, and people get all sort of like in a tizzy about this, okay? And suddenly it becomes this sort of little, weird, trending thing on Twitter, or not trending, obviously, like in a big sense, but, you get a lot of people talking about it all of a sudden. And for a brief minute, everyone's like, oh my God, they're about to crack the Epstein case wide open. This is it. This is the smoking gun. And it's not a smoking gun. It's old information that's being recycled. And I'm not trying to say like is being recycled like in a nefarious way, like this is part of some sort of distraction. But there are a lot of Johnny and Sally come latelys that find something and they think they're the only ones that have seen this. Okay, and a lot of this too is they're not looking up they're not going to like Pacer, okay, where it costs some money to look up court documents, okay? Not a lot, but it costs money, as I do, and downloading these and putting them on their website or making them available to people. What they're doing is they're like, it appears as if a lot of this are just like Google image searches or something, or they're going to another, some forum, some conspiracy forum where someone links to some weird website that hosted an image of one page of a criminal complaint from maybe 6 years ago involving Epstein or Trump. So, beware, be aware that this is going on, and be sort of careful because it's very easy to get roped into these things, and suddenly you think, this is it. It's all, they're blowing this case wide open. And the same thing with, the modeling agency. That has suddenly gotten a huge amount of attention, and everyone is talking about the, Trump modeling agency and, Russian adoptions and all these things. And again, Ed Opperman has been talking about this for years now, okay? He was like one of the first people that really started connecting a lot of these dots, regarding the Trump modeling agency, the shady guys that Trump was involved with, getting into that, Jean-Luc Brunel, who's on the Epstein side of these things. I mean, all these things have existed out there on the internet. And I'm not trying to say like, only me and Ed are the people that are covering them. But I do find it odd when it's not that difficult to find my work on this or Ed's work on this, but we don't exist to these people, okay? But for whatever reason, some guy named Claude Taylor, okay, who is the veteran of 3 presidential campaigns and served on the White House staff under Clinton, which is, and I'll get to what he did, okay? But that, he was not like a national security advisor or something. Suddenly, he's like, what he says about Epstein becomes well known. Everybody is talking about it all at once. He's super important. And, I find that to be a bit odd. These three people that had never really previously talked about this, okay? But all of a sudden, people are sending me tweets and, this person is onto something. The case is about to be cracked wide open. This is really important. You should be following this person. Now, let's just talk about this guy Claude Taylor for a second, because it's interesting. Just going to, we have 15 followers in common, including Prop or Not, which I only follow. I should unfollow them because they're so dumb. But Ed Opperman, Bill Kristol is interesting. Mark Hamill is also following Claude Taylor. Some other just regular people. I'm not going to, like friends of mine on Twitter that seem to follow him. Mark Halpern, a journalist, J.P. Satili, Daniel Hopsicker, Mark Ebner, John Batchelor, Montel Williams, Errol Lewis, Josh Rogan, Pat Kiernan. Now, Kiernan and Errol Lewis are interesting. They're both New York City journalists. They both work for New York One. That's interesting. But and John Batchelor is based in New York. But a lot of interesting people following this guy Claude Taylor. Okay, who, as I said, has seemingly become. I believe Keith Olbermann was using this guy as some sort of a source, or was referring to tweets that Claude Taylor was saying about anonymous sources, involved in the Russian, hack of the election, and Russian businessmen involved with Trump, and now he's talking quite a bit about Epstein. He's saying that Eric Schneiderman, who is the Attorney General in New York, the New York State Attorney General, that Schneiderman is going after Epstein and Trump, that he's got some sort of source that, they're looking into Trump's Soho property, and they're looking into Trump Modeling Agency, and there's this, all sorts of stuff related to the Jane Doe lawsuit. Looking at his pinned tweet from 3 hours ago, breaking: Schneiderman's source says Trump Soho is being investigated as, quote, essentially a Russian money laundering operation. Is that really news? Okay? No shit. Again. I'm not, this isn't me talking about it. J.P. Satili has been talking about that. Lots of people have been talking about these sources as being, again, it's not that difficult to trace Donald Trump to Russian money laundering or money laundering. I mean, this guy is mobbed up to the eyeballs, of course. Okay? So, it's interesting that this guy comes out of nowhere. Okay? And suddenly he's got all the answers. He's got all the facts. And he can basically just say, my sources are telling me this thing. And then suddenly Keith Olbermann is quoting this guy, okay, as some sort of a reputable source. Now, let's just look at Claude Taylor's LinkedIn. Now, this appears to be his official LinkedIn. The picture on his LinkedIn, looks like the same guy on his Twitter account. So let's see. Claude Taylor, owner, Claude Taylor Photography Incorporated. Current, Claude Taylor Photography Incorporated. Previous, Claude Taylor Photography Incorporated, Clinton Gore. This is what he's Clinton Gore. Okay. Now, let's just scroll down, and let's take a look at this guy. Experience, Chief Bottle Washer, Claude Taylor Photography Incorporated, President. Now, I don't know what the Chief Bottle Washer is. And it's like a link, it's like you can click on that on the LinkedIn thing, and it just brings you to page not found. Now, below that, where it lists him as the Chief Bottle Washer, Claude Taylor Photography is present. Then underneath that, it says Chief Bottle Washer, Claude Taylor Photography Incorporated, 1997 to 2007, 10 years. Okay. Then under that, this is his LinkedIn account, as far as I can tell. Under that, it says Chief of Stuff, Clinton Gore, 1996 to 1996, less than a year. Okay, Chief of Stuff. Now, I don't know if that's like, if he's trying to, be cute with that, and because I will admit, when I first sort of saw that, I said, Chief of Staff? Clinton Gore, less than a year, and then you look, it's a Chief of Stuff. Okay. Now, but what is that? Is that actually, I'll do a little bit more investigating. I mean, this is all sort of just me in the past 2 days looking at this stuff. But this is a pretty weird LinkedIn account. Okay, Chief Bottle Washer, and chief of staff for less than a year for Clinton Gore. Whereas on Twitter, he says he's the veteran of 3 presidential campaigns and served on the White House staff. Now, if you look up Claude Taylor, if you put him in Google, and you Google Claude Taylor Bill Clinton, he will come up. So, okay, there is something here. And what comes up when you search this, is a few things. One is a Daily Kos article, which I'll link to. Some stuff from from Claude Taylor talking. I think there's a tweet from him. I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I voted for Obama twice. I will vote for Hillary Clinton twice. This is from 26 October 2016. So we'll get to that in a minute. That's interesting. And then if you go down a couple things, there's an article in the Washington Post where it lists salaries at Clinton's White House. And this is an article in the Washington Post by Ann DeVroy from November 1st, 1993. I haven't gone through the full thing, but it's just sort of listing things. So President Clinton, $200,000. David Gergen, counsel to the president. Also, pictured, I believe it's David Gergen, there's a picture of him. I need to double check, but of him and Jeffrey Epstein, back in Harvard. But just a side note, and then it lists other people on down the list, executive secretary to the president, personal secretary, staff secretary, VIP receptionist. We've got cabinet affairs. We've got, chief of staff. So we get, the salary for, Thomas, McClarty, chief of staff, $125,000. And on down, and we get, special assistant chief of, whatever, communications. Now, let's find Claude Taylor. Volunteer office, $35,000 a year. Okay? This guy is not, maybe that's what chief of stuff means. I have no idea. But the volunteer office at the White House, this is not like, he's not in national security, okay? He's not legislative affairs. He's not working for the vice president. He's not a chief of staff. He's working. I don't even know if it says he's the head. I mean, I assume so because there's only two people listed in the volunteer office. It's Claude A. Taylor and Jennifer Dudley. And they're both listed as working for the volunteer office where they're making $35,000 a year, which is really not all that much. Okay. And the volunteer office, I mean, maybe he met the president once or twice, I mean, how many times do you really think some guy that works in the volunteer office is meeting the president? Even if he is meeting the president, fairly regularly, they're not talking about intimate details, this guy's not in on, important national security meetings or stuff, media strategies and political strategies and things like that. Couple that with the fact that this guy, I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I voted for President Obama twice. I will vote for President Hillary Clinton twice. Are we really going to trust this guy as having some sort of, important, knowledge that he's got some kind of source somewhere in New York, okay, in the state attorney's office of Eric Schneiderman? He's got some source within there, or I don't know, it's Schneiderman himself, that's giving him all sorts of details and things that you can't back up, okay? There's nothing, there's no paper trail. This guy's not listing anything. Now, okay, if he's saying, I have a source that's saying this, and then 2 weeks later it's confirmed in a CNN article or some I don't know, New York Times or something, okay, maybe there's something to that. But I mean, he's also saying stuff that we don't know. We have no way of confirming any of this. Now, is Schneiderman involved in this? I wouldn't be surprised, okay? I mean, Trump obviously lived here for his whole life. He's obviously involved in all sorts of shady things, so yeah, he might be. I think we should be a little bit weary, though, of kind of falling prey to this, for a variety of reasons. One of them being Trump fired Preet Bharara, okay? Who was definitely investigating all sorts of weird things and stopped him, okay? And that had, I think, more of a chance than the New York State Attorney General of getting, going after Trump. I mean, do we really think, come on, let's be logical here for a minute, that the Attorney General of the state of New York is going to take down a sitting president? I don't want to be like too pessimistic on this, but I just, I don't think we should jump on the bandwagon of some guy who worked in the volunteer office, who, I mean, from his own LinkedIn account, if we can believe this, was there for less than a year. Okay. Are we sure that this is really credible? It's also interesting that the salary, this White House article, this Washington Post article, that lists this guy Claude, and it's Claude A. Taylor. Okay, and it's Claude Taylor on Twitter and on LinkedIn. But this article in the Washington Post, as I said before, November 1st, 1993, Claude Taylor on LinkedIn says that he worked as chief of staff for Clinton Gore from 1996. So, I mean, when did he work there? What's going on here? I'm sorry, who the hell is this guy? Seriously, who is this guy? Then we get, independent reporter, IR.net, who's been writing a series of articles almost exclusively based on this guy's tweets, where he just anonymously states something, and they're saying this is fact. And, and they we just reported on this. And, we were covering, last week as we reported on sources which claim that Trump modeling agency was under investigation for criminal activity. So you click on that, okay, and then you get this wonderful headline, report, New York State is investigating Trump modeling agency. But then you find out that this is all the latest report from former White House staffer and veteran of 3 presidential campaigns, Claude Taylor, shows that not only is Mueller investigating Trump, but the state of New York is as well. Taylor's sources, while anonymous, have been surprisingly accurate over the past few months, and this time they have informed him that Trump Model Management, a Trump-owned modeling agency, is now under investigation. Now, okay, maybe it is true. Maybe all of his wonderful reports have come to pass. But, I mean, listen, what are we going by right now? We're going by some guy known as Claude Taylor, Claude A. Taylor, chief of staff for Bush Gore, who has some anonymous sources, and he's tweeting about this. Okay, it's not like he's, get a blog, write about this, make a video. I mean, seriously, do we even know that this person truly exists? And he's again, the whole thing doesn't really add up to being much to me. Then we just get some, IR.net, which, and now arguably I haven't looked into it enough. And I know that, on their website they've got, a way to report news and leak anonymously. And then you look at it and it's just, you look at the banner, you click on it, it's just to a fucking Gmail. It's just to irnetnews@gmail.com. That's how you leak anonymously to a Gmail account? I mean, now, come on, all right? Seriously, like, I have lots of problems with the Intercept and what it does, but, Intercept and some of these other things, they at least, allow for, true sort of, venues with which you can, anonymously give things. I mean, this is not WikiLeaks, okay? This is a Gmail account, okay, that anyone can just send an article to. And, it looks just like a lot of these websites that have popped up in the past several years that appear to look, they've got some of the hallmarks or the appearances of being some sort of a legitimate site. But then, you scroll down. Everything, half of the stuff up there are ads. It's an ad everywhere here and there. Lots of trending now stories, all these stupid like lists and, 24 stars that have, look like monsters now. I mean, it's like bullshit sort of stuff everywhere. Okay. And most of what they're saying is there's nothing to it. Okay. They're either regurgitating what actual news outlets have put out, or they're just regurgitating what some weird, mysterious guy who's come out of nowhere, who hasn't had a word to say about Jeffrey Epstein's connections to Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, any of these people before, apparently, very recently. But suddenly they've gotten all of this sort of publicity out of nowhere, and they've got real people following them. Now, so again, do we trust this? Do we trust independentreporter.net? I wouldn't. I would never use independentreporter.net as a source for something. I mean, it just, it's just not really credible. Come on. I mean, like, honestly, you know what it is? It's got, it reminds me sort of, not quite as bad maybe, but very much like, Before It's News, which is a total, joke. And, and it might actually be even worse. I would think Before It's News is some sort of not a psyop necessarily, but some way of just basically getting a whole bunch of idiots all together, reporting on garbage. But Before It's News is just one, it's like what you want to hear. It's stories on things that you want to hear. You want to hear that, Snowden, revealed the secrets of 9/11, which was like a Before It's News, headline article. I got someone, what was I just recently, talking about on the show. I can't even, the Manchester bombing. The last time I had Keelan on the show, I get this comment from some whack job on YouTube. Telling me, basically saying like, I can't believe you're not, you actually believe people died there. Everybody out there in the alternative media knows that nobody died. And then he sends, excuse me, I'm getting all gassy talking about this. Then he sends me a link to an article that he wrote on Before It's News, supposedly. He said he wrote it. Saying how it's all fake and blah. I mean, it's just garbage. It's just what people want to hear. And that's what this website, ir.net, looks like to me. It's stuff that people want to hear that this is going on. Now, obviously, I mean, I want to hear this too. If this person, Maria, has actually, was a 12-year-old Trump rape victim and has gone forward and is talking, then okay, that's great. I would like to hear that. Definitely. This sounds good. Okay. But here's my thing with all of this. And this is sort of an interesting thing that appears to happen more and more, with the Epstein story, is all of a sudden the story kind of dies down. And people kind of forget about it, with the exception of, myself and Ed Opperman, and a few people, I will say some good actual Twitter, investigators, Crypto Cuttlefish, great stuff. But has done a lot of good work on Epstein, linking things together. I've used stuff that he's or she is put out there and even sent to me as well on Twitter. But, a lot of this too is just like, we've now entered into some sort of an area or a time in our lives where, we're not questioning anything. We're just saying, oh, this is great. I love this story. I'm just going to go with it. I'm not going to look up who Claude Taylor is. I'm not going to look up where ir.net is located. I'm not going to do any of the sort of due diligence. I'm going to see something that I like and I'm just going to go with it. But with the Epstein stuff, it dies down, okay? And nobody really pays attention. And then all of a sudden, there's always this fantastic story that pops up out of nowhere that everyone gloms onto, everyone focuses on, and to the exclusion of everything else. So people can remember back, and it does happen coincidentally when there is a real development in the case. So that's why I bring this up. When the original stuff with the Jane Doe lawsuit against Epstein and Trump was going forward, when people were alleging all sorts of crazy things were going on, especially then too when the and this was during the election when this was happening. What happened all of a sudden? Out of nowhere, everyone on Twitter and Reddit and Vote and all these conspiracy forums and stuff are talking about the temple, the occult temple down on his private island in the Caribbean. And suddenly, for people had different angles from this island and special pictures, and there was video that it was brand new. None of this was new, okay? The video, this infamous video, I believe it was in the Daily Mail. It had been out for years, okay? The pictures of this temple had been out for years, okay? People knew about them. If you went to Google Earth, you would see that there was clearly this sort of weird blue and white temple with some sort of gold bird or something above it, that it was at the corner, at the southern tip of the island. This was all there. I knew about it. I had spoken about it in at least one of the podcasts that I had done on Epstein. Tom Secker can attest to the two of us spending hours together, okay, on Skype, combing through all sorts of pictures and things like that. But for whatever reason, in the midst of some serious allegations about the president being involved in some sort of a sex scandal involving raping a young girl, all of a sudden, all over the internet were brand new pictures too. Okay, now there were some new pictures from different angles. Some of them to me looked fake, and I know that we're getting down into this, fake pictures and things like that, and I hate doing that. But some of them, and I couldn't figure out where these pictures were coming from. It was very hard to trace back. Well, on archive.org even, you putting in the URL and see, but you couldn't figure out where these pictures were coming from. And there was a lot of dead ends with this, to the point where, and then you start seeing, I saw at least a few of these sort of brand new pictures. I mean, they had just been posted, like recently, like a few hours before, they came. So then it's like, where did you get them? Again, Ed Opperman talks about this chain of custody. Where did who took the picture? Who first put it on the internet? When did when was it first posted on this website? When did this website stop posting the picture? I mean, there's so many questions to all of this that are just not being answered. Okay? And I find it odd that there's always this, but then when there are big developments, okay, like for instance, Jane Doe 43, filing this lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein, no one cares. No one's looking at it. No one wants to know. Even though that lawsuit very eloquently lays out exactly how his sexual trafficking enterprise worked. From, the lowest person, the lowest sort of victim, all the way up to the top with Epstein. But nobody's reporting on that, okay? Instead, everyone's talking about occult rituals and how Epstein is, bloodlines with the Rothschilds. And yeah, okay, he knows the Rothschilds, sure. That's where Alan Dershowitz first met him. But What is the temple going to give us? Nothing. Okay? Is anyone going to go down to that island? No. Okay? Was anybody in the midst of this temple thing looking at there are pictures of that island before Epstein I guess owned it, okay? Because it looks just, it's like a forested, it's like a jungle or something. Was anyone looking into this boat that crashed on the island before Epstein was living there? No. Instead, it was these vague stories about this temple, and that there was you could see from the aerial photographs that there was an underground tunnel, and this is where they were sacrificing, and that became the story, and that everyone was focusing on. So, is that what we're seeing right now? I'm not sure, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions or anything like that. But I honestly don't trust this guy, Claude Taylor. And I do think, yes, there is something that is happening in the background. Okay? I think the fact that this guy, Claude Taylor, is getting so much publicity on the internet is evidence that there is something going on. But, again, are we trusting this guy who voted for Bill Clinton twice, voted for Obama twice, and is going to vote for Hillary Clinton twice? I hate kind of like, when everyone brings up Donald Trump and actually, oh yeah, but what about Bill Clinton? Well, I don't really care about Bill Clinton right now, okay, because he's not the president. But, there is relevance to that, So does Claude Taylor Bill Clinton had nothing to do with this? He was never on the plane. Are we really meant to believe that a White House Clinton staffer is, again, he's our conduit through which we're getting this sort of information? Come on. I mean, again, do we trust this? Is there an ulterior motive to this? Is there something more to what this guy is saying, or is he distracting us? Is he just trying to lead us down a path, or maybe the distraction isn't even that it's all bogus. I mean, are they getting people to look at something that has already kind of been there, but it's been repackaged in such a way that this is new and exciting information, and they're just sort of regurgitating it. So I don't know, but I do think there is something there. I have heard, various rumors. I am somewhat plugged into to this world, and I do keep my ear to the ground when it comes to the Epstein stuff. And again, too, I mean, it's not that difficult when you can just go on Pacer and you can look up a lot of this stuff. You can tell. Well, yeah, something is going on. I said this before. When Ghislaine Maxwell disappeared, okay, something is going on. They can't find her. Then next thing you know, the case is settled. So this is not like rocket science, okay? But it does take a little bit of hard work, and I don't think that anonymous White House sources are hard work. I don't think that's really is enough. I don't think that really warrants hard work. I don't think it really means all that much. Now, and again, too, this Claude Taylor guy, I mean, he's a photographer, White House staffer, different name. His LinkedIn makes no sense. I mean, who is this guy? And again, we're really putting our faith in undisclosed location near DC guy, and again too, even in his description, I mean, never Putin's bitch. So I mean, we're already kind of getting, okay, so this is, again, you can kind of tell this guy's biased from the get go. So all I'm trying to say with this is, people out there need to kind of like take a step back and look at this stuff and really analyze it for like 5 minutes, okay? You don't need to analyze this like, for hours and, searching things on the internet. Because again, it's really like, it's not that difficult, okay? If you just Google this guy, Claude Taylor, you see that, well, he's worked at the volunteer office, at the White House. His LinkedIn account, I mean, I don't know what that is. I mean, it appears like it's something completely different. It lists his time as working there as different from this article. It's like at the very least, it's just sort of, untrustworthy is I guess what it is. So keep this in mind. There's a lot of people out there that they just jump on these things. They don't think about anything. And then, a lot of them I don't think are even like aware that they're being distracted from something or that they're being led down some ridiculous path. And it's also just to, a little credit where credit's due. I've covered this thing a lot. It's not that difficult to find my shows on this or my interviews on this. And, a lot of this stuff isn't new stuff. Okay? And a lot of this is, it's, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I honestly don't think that we're going to be hearing from Maria anytime soon. This supposed girl who's involved, in the lawsuit. I also think it's interesting too. I mean, they just refer to this as Jane Doe. They don't give a number. I mean, the woman's identity is known. But that is interesting that they don't acknowledge who this person is. That it come forward eventually. And nobody really wants to talk about what happened with that whole thing. The Jane Doe that was involved in the original rape allegations against Donald Trump. I mean, there's a reason that law, that she basically stopped. Okay, they got to her. Do we really think that Maria is going to come forward? I doubt it. But it's one of those stories that feels good to talk about. It's one of those stories that's exciting. It makes you feel like you're sort of like tuned into it. Smoking Gun is about to come out. I don't think that's really quite how this sort of stuff works, unfortunately. And I think, people need to kind of realize that, and they need to, look a little deeper. Okay, there's more to this stuff than a tweet. A tweet's not going to solve this whole mess. Okay, a tweet's not going to give us all this information. So keep that in mind. And if you would, if you do value all of this sort of stuff, if you value the work that I do, then I suggest you go to AmericanFreedomRadio.com and you click on the donate button, and you throw a little bit of money over to American Freedom Radio. It doesn't have to be a lot, you can become a recurring donator for, a few bucks, every month, but it really helps us out a lot. And again, if you appreciate real investigate. And I'm not calling myself a journalist, okay? But if you appreciate real research, if you appreciate people that can talk about these things with a bit of expertise, if you enjoy conversations where I talk to people like my friend Lizzy, just about her own personal experiences in a place like Palestine or anything like that, then I do suggest that you donate to American Freedom Radio. Every little bit helps. Every little bit it goes towards making sure that we can stay on the air, because honestly, like, the more and more, I see, we don't need any more Claude Taylors out there. We don't need any more IR.nets. What we really need is American Freedom Radio and people that truly care about the truth and reality that we're living in, and people that are willing to talk about these things. So, something to keep in mind. Of course, if you want to support me, you can always do that at patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. I'm also on PayPal as well. Of course, AFR is on Patreon as well. Patreon's a great way to support AFR, as is PayPal. Quick couple notes. I've got a really what should be a great episode next Tuesday with Jeffrey Augustine, of course, of Surviving Scientology Radio. And after that, I think I'm going to be covering a bit more on this privatization of the military. So lots of stuff to look forward to. Thank you all so much for listening.
news and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.